like the Northamptonshire Charter are exactly the kind of partnership we want to see.
Colin Lockhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister not agree that women would be more empowered in the workspace or on the sports field if their changing space or their toilets were not invaded by biological males?
She will be aware of the Supreme Court judgment, which gave clarity on this, and we do expect that all providers will follow that ruling.
Alex Easton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Has the Minister considered using all the government's levers in female-dominated low-paid sectors, including uprating the minimum wage and strengthening fair work standards in social care, early years and the cleaning industry?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member will be aware of the work that we are doing to make sure that we do support women in all ways that we can.
We come to stop it. Member Pettigill.
Number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is reinforcing our commitment to championing the rights of disabled people. This month we celebrate Disability History Month, and we marked the International Day of Persons with Disabilities last week. And this year also marks the 30th anniversary of the Disability Discrimination Act. We will continue our work to boost opportunities for disabled people, including through developing our plan for disability, which will outline our priorities for removing barriers for disabled people.
Member Pettigill.
Mr. Speaker, women in rural areas often have to travel long distances to reach a refuge, a police station or basic support services. What assessment has the Minister made of the impact these distances have on safety of victims of domestic abuse, and what action is being taken to close the rural support gap?
I do recognise the challenge that the Honourable Lady presents. That's why, through the development of our Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, we've heard from victims in rural areas to understand what more is needed to make sure that they can access the services and the support that they need.
Donald Triton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Western Isles Women's Aid in my constituency helped 180 women last year. Their refuge is working at capacity, yet their funding is uncertain. That's why my fundraiser on Friday will raise funds for the organisation. Mr. Speaker, over 1,800 women reported domestic abuse in the Highlands 10 years ago. Last year, the figure was closer to 2,800. Does the Minister agree that in rural and island communities, it takes a lot of courage for women to report domestic abuse, even though, as we can see, the figures say there is no less incidence of domestic abuse?
I do agree with my honourable friend. It does take enormous courage to come forward, and there are additional barriers that women in rural communities can often experience. I do commend him for his fundraising efforts. Alongside that, we're investing more in support services for victims, and I hope that he will see, when we publish our Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, that we've heard directly from those living in rural communities to understand what more is needed to put in place the support they require.
Secretary of State Claire Coutinho.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Jennifer Melee, a black nurse with a faultless record, was racially abused by a convicted paedophile for correctly referring to his biological sex in a medical context. She was called the N-word multiple times in her workplace, and yet she was the one who was punished by her NHS Trust and the Nursing and Midwifery Council, and she is still suspended from the job she loves 18 months later. Does the Secretary of State agree that the dedicated nurses who are being punished for asserting that biological sex is real are facing a gross injustice? And will she meet with Jennifer to hear her story?
I'm grateful to the right honourable lady. No one should face racist abuse or violence in any workplace, and that includes within the NHS. As we've also seen with the Sandy Peggy case, coming to these decisions in a timely manner is incredibly important. I hope this matter can be resolved as swiftly as possible, and I would of course be happy to meet with Jennifer to hear her experiences.
Claire Coutinho.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the Secretary of State doing that. Now, does the Secretary of State believe that an 8-year-old child with autism can consent to a medical pathway that will leave them infertile and without sexual function for the rest of their life? If not, will she tell the Health Secretary herself to stop this puberty blocker experiment, which will biologically castrate children?
Mr. Speaker, we are... Mr Speaker, we are implementing all of the recommendations of the CAS review. That also included establishing a clinical trial through the Pathways Trial Research Protocol, which has undergone a thorough independent review, has received all regulatory and ethical approvals. This was a recommendation that Baroness Cass brought forward, along with many others, and it's one that we are taking forward.
Russell.
Question number 5, Mr Speaker. There is a massive problem with childcare for mothers doing PhDs. Even if you are fully funded for your university research, essentially by the government, you will not be eligible for free childcare hours. This affects both parents. The average PhD stipend is just £15,000 a year, but the average nursery place is £12,500 a year. Will the Minister look into this?
Mr Speaker, I'd be happy to discuss this further with my honourable friend. We are committed to reviewing childcare support and making sure it is accessible and simple for families. Of course, PhD students are not eligible for some elements of support, but depending on income, may be eligible for certain hours. But also, student parents are eligible for the universal 15 hours of early free education, and this is available also to all 3- and 4-year-olds, regardless of family circumstances.
We now come to Prime Minister's questions. Sarah Aldey.
Question number 1, Mr Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, the whole House will join me in sending our deepest sympathy and condolences to the family and loved ones of Lance Corporal George Hooley of the Parachute Regiment, who died yesterday in Ukraine. Lance Corporal Hooley was injured in a tragic accident away from the front lines while observing Ukrainian forces testing a new defensive capability. His life was full of courage and determination. He served our country with honour and distinction around the world in the cause of freedom and democracy, including as part of the small number of British personnel in Ukraine. Mr Speaker, I place his name on record today to express our gratitude and respect, and to affirm that his service will never be forgotten. Yeah. Mr Speaker, on Monday I hosted President Zelensky, President Macron and Chancellor Merz in Downing Street. We must redouble our efforts. The UK, Europe and our allies will stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine, stand up to Putin's aggression and work to deliver a just and lasting peace. Mr Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Sir Aldey.
Mr Speaker, a couple in my constituency fled persecution from the Egyptian authorities, who accused them of being traitors and terrorists due to their work as professional journalists. They gained refugee status here in 2021 and are now 3 months away from being eligible for indefinite leave to remain. The UK is their home, but their stability and family life are being threatened by changes in government policy. I'm concerned that the government has lost sight of the real-life impact that these changes will have on working families living here legally, and with details of transitional arrangements still under consultation, can the Prime Minister provide clarity regarding the transitional support available to families already on the pathway to indefinite leave to remain? Thank you.
Well, can I say this country will always be compassionate in relation to refugees and comply with our full obligations under the various conventions. It is important that we address some of the challenges we face at the moment, but we mustn't lose sight that we've always been a compassionate country that welcomes refugees to our shores.
Rachel Massey.
Mr Speaker, while the last government was indifferent to child poverty, this government's driving mission must be to eradicate child poverty, and the strategy is a first step on that path. Over the first 1,001 critical days in pregnancy and early years, poverty contributes to malnourished babies, developmental delay, hypothermia and poor life outcomes. This is unacceptable. So will the Prime Minister lift pregnant women and babies out of poverty in York and across the country in this Parliament and ensure that we relieve poverty over the first 1,001 critical days?
Can I thank her for raising this? And I'm proud that babies born today will have a better start in life thanks to our decisions. Mr Speaker, I am particularly concerned by maternity services And that's why we've commissioned a review, so every mother is heard, gets proper care at what should be a special time, and currently too many are failed. We're funding Healthy Babies services in 75 of the most deprived areas, and we've taken action to save parents up to £500 a year on infant formula. It is a moral mission of this government to lift children out of poverty, and we intend to do so. The Leader of the Opposition thinks that maternity pay is excessive and would go back to the failment that puts hundreds of thousands of children into poverty.
Kevin Baden, not the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I echo the sentiments of the Prime Minister? The thoughts of the whole House will rightly be with the family of Lance Corporal Hooley, who tragically died supporting Ukraine in her fight for freedom. Yeah. Can the right honourable gentleman tell the House why are his own MPs describing him as a caretaker Prime Minister?
Mr. Speaker, my own MPs are very proud. We've just passed a budget which protected our public services and our NHS. No austerity which brought our NHS to the ground. We've created the conditions for economic stability with the headroom we need. And, Mr. Speaker, we're concentrating on the single most important issue for families up and down the country, which is the cost of living, by taking £150 off their energy bills. That's in addition to the £150 for the 6 million of the poorest household. We're concentrating on what matters to the country. She's trying to save her job.
Mr. Speaker, let me answer the question for the Prime Minister. He's being called a caretaker because everyone can see that he's lost control of his party. And this lot, they're all so busy trying to replace him.
Order. Sorry? Can I just say the same people are making the same noises they made last week. I did say last week it wasn't the right time. I wouldn't do it this week. So please, let's not carry on with the way we left it last week. Kevin Baden.
Mr. Speaker, they can make as much noise as they like. We all know that this lot are so busy trying to replace him that they've taken their eyes off the ball. Let's start, Mr. Speaker. Wait for it. Let's start with the Energy Secretary, who wants to recycle himself as leader. He said he'd cut families' energy bills by £300. Can the Prime Minister tell the House how much have energy bills fallen by since the election?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to say we're taking £150 off energy bills. I can also tell her that that's on top of the £150 we've taken off last year for the 3 million poorest families, now for 6 million poorest families. Mr. Speaker, she talks about leaving. The problem for us, last week,
Mr. May, I've told this side. I'll now tell this side. We don't need the pantomime auditions anymore, please.
Mr. Speaker, last week I pointed out that 3 of her ex-MPs went to reform. That included the former Deputy Chairman, Jonathan Gullis. He liked to think of himself as a straight talker. He said they're finished and they've lost the trust of the British people. In total, Mr. Speaker, 21 ex-Tory MPs have now left for reform. The real question, Mr. Speaker, is who's next? We can all see the Shadow Justice Secretary twitching after his come and get me plea from the member of Clacton. Mr. Speaker, we need no lessons from them.
Mr. Speaker, I asked him about energy bills. You could power the national grid on all of that hot air. He promised to cut energy bills by £300. Energy bills have risen by £187. But let's look at someone else who's making a mess. Let's look at the Education Secretary. Oh, there she is. Labour pledged to recruit 6,500 more teachers. So can the Prime Minister tell the House how many extra teachers are there since she became Education Secretary?
More than when they left office. I'm very proud to say so. We're in an upward trajectory. Oh, Mr. Speaker, they left our health service on its knees. They left our schools in a mess. They left our economy absolutely broken. They should be utterly ashamed of their record in service.
Wrong. Mr. Speaker, there are now 400 fewer teachers since she came into office. She's shaking her head. It's on the DFE website. Does she not check it once in a while? I can understand that the Right Honourable Lady is angry. We're all angry at the mess she's making. The Prime Minister doesn't know what's going on in energy. He doesn't know what's going on in education. Does he know anything about what's going on in the Home Office? Last year, the Prime Minister promised to recruit 13,000 more police officers. How's that going?
Prime Minister.
3,000 more by the end of March, and we're rising on police numbers. Mr. Speaker, they left the Home Office. The criminal justice system is utterly broken. Sir Brian Leveson has said on that. They lost control of our borders. They lost control of every single department. And she's obviously spent the morning rehearsing for the Liz Truss show. She's probably going to be the guest star next week. Both of them talking about how Liz Truss was 100% right. But what Liz Truss said was the Conservatives need to take... No, they don't want to hear it. The Conservatives need to take responsibility. The Conservatives need to take responsibility for their 14 years of failure. That was Liz Truss, their former leader. So perhaps she'll heed that, get up and say sorry.
Wrong again. I asked him how many police officers. There are now 1,300 fewer officers than at the election. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if the Home Secretary wants his job, but I do read that she's having conversations with Tony Blair because he's already given up on the Prime Minister. Why don't we talk about the Health Secretary? Let's see how he's doing. We do know he definitely wants the job. He said he'd end the doctor strikes. So can the Prime Minister tell the House how many appointments have been lost to strike action since last July?
Mr. Speaker, they left the NHS an absolute mess, with the highest waiting lists on record and the lowest confidence in the NHS ever. The Health Secretary said he would do 2 million extra appointments. He hasn't done 2 or 3 or 4. He's done 5 million extra appointments. That is because we invested in the NHS. What did they do? Having broken it, they voted against that investment. They should hang their heads in shame.
Mr. Speaker, I asked him how many appointments have been lost to strike action. He doesn't know. Let me tell him. We have lost 93,000 appointments to strikes since the Health Secretary gave doctors a massive pay rise. It's the truth. I know they wouldn't know the truth if it punched them in the face, but I'm telling them the truth. It is no wonder that we read this morning that the former Deputy Prime Minister has said about the Health Secretary she'd rather stick pins in her eyes than be on his golden ticket. And, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister congratulates himself on 5 million extra appointments. In our last year of office, we delivered 6.5 million extra appointments. Under Labour, Mr. Speaker, everything is getting worse. Jobs, bills, police numbers, teacher numbers, everything is getting worse. The Cabinet should be doing their own jobs. What are they doing? They're trying to compete for the caretaker's job. The only person who doesn't want the Prime Minister's job is the Chancellor. She's just trying to cling on to her own. Isn't it time, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister admits that Labour isn't working?
Mr. Speaker, she's living proof you can say whatever you like when nobody is listening to anything you have to say. There's absolutely no substance. She's no credibility on the economy. She still believes that Liz Truss was 100% right. She wants to go back to austerity with £47 billion of cuts. She thinks the minimum wage should be frozen too high. She's got no credibility on foreign policy. She complains about trade deals she tried to get and we got. She says that we should stay at home and not attend NATO or the G7. On issue after issue, she's clinging on to reform. That's not leadership, it's weakness. No wonder so many are leaving her party. They know there's absolutely no reason to stay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thousands of families are moving into new estates only to discover that basic infrastructure, roads, drains and sewers remain in limbo, unadopted by public authorities. In mid-Cheshire alone, 4,700 households, more than 12% of all properties in the constituency, face this uncertainty with no guarantee over maintenance, safety and future costs, often years after developers have walked away. Can the Prime Minister say what steps he will take to make adoption timely and enforceable so homeowners are not left carrying the burden of unfinished infrastructure?
Well, I thank him for raising this serious issue for his constituents and over 1.7 million homeowners across the country who are left at the mercy of unfair costs and poor management. I can confirm we're consulting on reforming this system to reduce private management of these estates and to protect more homeowners from unfair charges. That's a vital part of our leasehold reforms to protect homeowners from high cost and make sure everyone has the amenities that they need.
Sir Ed Davey, Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Prime Minister in offering our condolences to the family and friends of Lance Corporal George Hooley, who died on duty in Ukraine? Our thoughts and prayers are with them. Can I congratulate Glastonbury's Lando Norris on becoming the 11th British driver to win the Formula One World Championship, and also everyone at McLaren's in Woking who powered him to the title. Mr. Speaker, President Trump's new national security strategy is a deeply alarming document. Quite apart from the irony of President Trump accusing others of trampling on basic principles of democracy, it repeats far-right tropes of civilizational erasure and threatens that the US government will cultivate resistance in Europe. No wonder Vladimir Putin has welcomed that strategy. So will the Prime Minister pick up the phone and make it clear to President Trump that any attempts to interfere with our democracy are totally unacceptable?
Can I join him in congratulating Lando for the incredible win? I went down to Woking on Monday to see some of the team at McLaren, and they're all wearing the pride that brought with them. On the question of Europe and President Trump's comments, what I see is a strong Europe, united behind Ukraine and united behind our long-standing values of freedom and democracy, and I will always stand up for those values and those freedoms.
Ed Davey.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't hear about standing up to President Trump. And if we're going to stand up to President Trump, we do need to strengthen our ties with Europe, not just on defence, but on the economy too. And the truth is, this government will not succeed unless it gets our economy growing strongly again. And the best way to do that is a customs union with Europe. The Prime Minister's chief economic advisor knows it. The Deputy Prime Minister knows it. And yesterday, the Labour chair of the Treasury Select Committee showed she knows it too when she backed our bill. Does the Prime Minister fear that if he keeps opposing a customs union, in 12 months' time, he will not be standing there?
Mr. Speaker, we have got a close relationship with the EU through our reset earlier this year. And yes, I do want a closer relationship than the one we've got at the moment. We are moving towards that. We do have manifesto commitments on issues such as single market, customs union and freedom of movement. But I would gently point this out, that having now done significant trade deals with other countries, including the US and India, which are hugely important to the JLR workforce and on pharma, it is not now sensible to unravel what is effectively the best deal with the US that any country has got.
Sir Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Working in NHS, I saw the consequences of Tory underinvestment in our health service. I welcome the progress under this Labour government, falling waiting lists, higher patient satisfaction with the general practice, and the rollout of neighbourhood health centres announced in the budget. I thank the frontline staff, including in mental health and community services, for all their hard work, and I am especially grateful to all the staff at the William Harvey Hospital in Ashford who turned up to work during the last BML-led resident doctor strike and ensured that so many planned appointments went ahead. With rising hospital admissions because of flu and increased demand on A&E services, Does the Prime Minister agree that the BMA should call off their next planned strike and instead work with the government to find a solution?
Mr Speaker is right. Waiting lists are falling with over 5 million extra appointments. More people are being seen within 18 weeks and we've hired 2,600 new GPs. That's real progress thanks to the hard work of NHS staff backed by our record investment. I do think the strikes are unjustified and they threaten that hard-won progress, and the focus should always be on patients.
Samuel Roberts.
He just said, the Prime Minister, he wanted a closer relationship with Europe, but then referenced the Labour Party manifesto. Wales has been hardest hit by Brexit. Exports are down by a third. When will he admit that the only solution to the chaos imposed by Brexit is to rejoin the customs union and the single market, or is he too afraid of what his party might say?
Mr Speaker, I went to Solihull to see the JLR workforce before we got the deal with President Trump. They were worried sick that they were going to lose their jobs, and that would be a loss for them, their families and their communities. I took the call from President Trump when we got the deal in Solihull in JLR, so the first people I could tell were the workforce, who knew very well that that meant their jobs were safeguarded. We've also just done a deal on pharma, which is the first of its kind in the world and the best of its kind in the world. It is not sensible or fair to the JLR workforce or to the pharma sector to say, having achieved those things now, we should unravel them by discussion about a customs union. I just don't think it's a sensible way to take our country forward.
Justine.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Of the almost 1 million young people not in education, employment or training, hundreds of thousands are disconnected from the system entirely. Youth workers have a unique ability to bridge young people into support. I wouldn't be stood here today if I hadn't been supported by a youth worker called Russell when I dropped out of school. So will the Prime Minister use the National Youth Strategy to deliver a shared long-term vision for young people's outcomes, with good work as a central pillar and youth workers and trusted adults at its heart?
Well, I thank him for his question. The party opposite presided over a lost decade for our young people. I'm determined to support every young person to reach their potential. That's why we're delivering the first National Youth Strategy for 15 years to transform youth services, backed by over £500 million. Mr Speaker, that means more youth workers, more youth centres and a network of 50 young future hubs. That's on top of our youth job guarantee and our plan to create 50,000 more apprenticeships. We're building a Britain for the next generation.
Shakib Bhatti.
Mr Speaker, over the coming weeks, millions of people from across the country will be visiting their local church. Churches are the custodians of our history and do enormous good. But in January, the government announced a £19 million cut to the listed places of worship grant, as well as putting a cap on the repair costs. This cut puts thousands of local churches at risk. And I say to the Prime Minister, if we lose our churches, we lose the very soul and essence of our communities and our country. So as we go into Christmas, will the Prime Minister do the right thing? He has 10 at risk in his own constituency. Will he reconsider this policy so that we can save our churches?
Well, Mr Speaker, we do support our churches and the work that those within our churches do, particularly in the lead up to Christmas, and I've got a reception for them in Downing Street this very afternoon.
Jim Dixon.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Before May's election, Reform in Kent promised that they would improve services and cut taxes. Instead, vital services to older people and those with a mental health condition provided by great organisations like Imago and Involve is to be cut and taxes are going up. Would the Prime Minister agree with me on two things? That given the additional money for the county through the Fair Funding Review, it's beyond belief that Kent are cutting services that vulnerable people rely on, and that their so-called Doge unit, that we were told would eliminate waste, actually stands for deluded, overconfident, gormless and embarrassing.
Well, it sums up very well how his community have been utterly let down by Reform. Whilst the member for Clacton is making excuses about his behaviour at school, look at what his party are doing across the country. Chaos in Kent, In Hampshire, their mayoral candidate says the Deputy Prime Minister, a black British man born in this country, should go back to the Caribbean. In Staffordshire, Reform's leader has been exposed as a white supremacist. It's not a coincidence, Mr. Speaker, because chaos and division is a member of Clacton's life work.
We're a hobos.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Bath, parents of children with special educational needs, often very complex needs, are crying out for special school places. Funding to build a brand new special school at that Culver Hay site in Bath was secured, but the government has frozen the funding for almost 18 months without any explanation, leaving many families in the lurch. How much longer do families and children with special educational needs have to wait for this vital new school?
Well, I thank you for raising this, and we are working closely with local authorities on plans for special and alternative provision-free schools. We are keen to progress this, and I'll make sure that ministers update her in her particular case. But we are determined to fix the SEND system that fails parents and fails children, and that's why we've launched a national conversation to put families at the heart of the lasting reform. We've already put money into extra new places, a language support and Best Start family hubs being rolled out across every area from April.
Christine Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Blackburn, West Lothian, St Kentigern's Academy was part demolished due to rack and is being rebuilt, costing £35 million. West Lothian Council found £20 million from its own stretched budget, but despite repeated pleas to the Scottish Cabinet Secretary for Education, who called it the most deserving case, funding has not been delivered. Will the Prime Minister back my call for the Scottish Government to urgently fund the £15 million shortfall and raise it with the First Minister in their next meeting?
Well, can I thank her, because she's fought for her constituents on this issue for years, and meanwhile decades of SNP cuts and broken promises have left schools crumbling. Mr. Speaker, what a contrast. By the end of this Parliament, every school in England will either be rack-free or we will rebuild them entirely. We delivered the largest settlement for the Scottish Government in the history of devolution. So the question for the SNP is, after decades of decline, what is their excuse?
Dr. Luke Evans.
Mr. Speaker, I feel for the Prime Minister. It must be tough wherever he goes in the UK because of his policies. A pub, higher taxes. A restaurant, higher taxes. A cafe, higher taxes. A farm, higher taxes. A GP, higher taxes. A care home, higher taxes. A hospice, higher taxes. So, Mr. Speaker, is this the reason the Prime Minister chooses to spend so much time out of this country?
What a load of nonsense. Mr. Speaker, we are at a critical stage in progress in Ukraine that will affect Ukraine's sovereignty, the whole of Europe, and the values that we hold dear. We are part of one of the leading countries to strengthen NATO at a vital time for defence and security in Europe. And we've secured trade deals that they tried for years to achieve, but never did because of our international engagement. And we've got better relations with the EU, all of which is good for our country. Ridiculous question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The video games company Rockstar in my constituency last month fired 31 employees without providing evidence or union representation. The IWGB alleges union busting. Having met Rockstar, they failed to reassure me they are following employment law, and I share concerns about union busting. Given this government is responsible for the biggest increase in workers' rights in a generation, does the Prime Minister agree all companies, regardless of profit size, must follow UK employment law, and all workers have the right to join a union?
Well, it's a deeply concerning case. Every worker has the right to join a trade union, and we're determined to strengthen workers' rights and ensure they don't face unfair consequences for being part of a union. Ministers will look into the particular case that he raises and keep him updated.
Blake Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Digital ID is intrusive and fundamentally un-British. The government has no mandate for it. No sensible person believes it will tackle illegal immigration or illegal working. It's an attack on our open society and a staggering waste of taxpayers' money, isn't it?
Digital ID has huge benefits, as many countries in Europe are already demonstrating. And where they failed on our borders, we're taking control of our borders, and I'm proud that we're doing so.
Jenny Riddle-Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister will know that SEND is in crisis across the country, but it's in particular crisis in Suffolk, where the County Council is in special measures for its failings. I'm delighted that the Government has listened to one of my asks, which is to have a national conversation about SEND, so parents, young people and their advocates can have their voices heard. Will the Prime Minister back my call to make sure that we deliver the funding for the former Saxmundham Set School in Saxmundham that closed its doors for the last time in 2024?
Can I thank her? I know she's a dedicated campaigner on this issue, and I'll make sure ministers update her on the latest progress in her constituency. Our ambition is to make sure all children with SEND have access to the right support. That's why we're working closely with local authorities to deliver places where they're needed most.
Sarah Bull.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is always talking about the fair choices that it has made. But is it a fair choice to balloon the benefits bill? Is it a fair choice to introduce an unfunded and unwanted digital ID that will cost the public billions? And is it a fair choice to increase taxes on working people when the promise was not to? The answer, Mr. Speaker, is no. So can I ask the Prime Minister to consider one final... So can I ask the Prime Minister to give one final fair choice, thinking of food security and to avoid devastation for families across the country and reverse the family farm tax?
Mr. Speaker, welfare ballooned on their watch. When the Shadow Chancellor was responsible for welfare, it ballooned by £33 billion. They left a £22 billion black hole. The OBR reviewed and said they added £16 billion to that. We'll take no lecture from them on the economy.
Final question, Carl Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's no denying that this government inherited a crisis in our criminal courts, with a number of cases waiting to be tried growing every single day. So if the Justice Secretary plan to do away with jury trials in some cases, not all, in some cases, is really about addressing the backlog and getting the position to something manageable, then why isn't there a sunset clause? And why has that been ruled out?
Well, he's absolutely right to draw attention to the crisis in our courts. Yes, he says. Sir Brian Leveson is one of our most respected senior judges. He did an independent report, and he made clear that we risk, in his words, total collapse of the criminal justice system without change. That is what they're chuntering at. That is what they left. A system near total collapse, where victims of sexual violence and rape wait years to get justice. That is not justice, that is victims failed. I can reassure him, and I know he feels very strongly on this, that juries will remain a cornerstone of our justice system for the most serious cases.
Mr. Robertson, I don't want shouting like that again. Do we understand each other? Okay. Right. That completes Prime Minister's questions. Yeah. Point of order, Rachel Blake.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. The Shadow Home Secretary has visited my constituency to make a political video for social media. He's undertaken videoed interviews with apparently no reference to the services available to tackle the issues that he's seeking to highlight. Mr. Speaker, I cannot accept his attempt to use the communities in Westminster and the City as a political football, and since before I was elected, I've campaigned for more local police officers and specialist outreach workers to tackle the very specific issues we're facing locally. And following my campaigning, the government has invested an additional £12 million into Westminster. And
I think we got the message. You're absolutely right with the first part. No, you don't go into full detail. You've made the point of order. The point of order is about somebody coming into another person's constituency. The answer is clear. Whichever side of the House are on, whichever party you might represent, you have to allow the Member of Parliament notice that you are coming in. We've had it before. We don't need it. We're quite a long way for general election. So I am disappointed. You should always be informed of somebody coming in. Please, respect each other. Point of order, John MacDonald.
I don't like doing this, Mr. Speaker, but I have to. I wrote on behalf of several members to the Secretary of State for Justice last Wednesday. It is in relation to the hunger strike that's taking place within our prisons at the moment by Palestine Action prisoners, some of whom now have been hospitalised. We wrote simply asking for a meeting with the Secretary of State. We've not received any response. I informed his office yesterday I'd be raising a point of order. We gave it another day. We still haven't had a response to that letter. This is a matter of urgency, and I would have expected at least the courtesy of some response, even if he's not willing to meet us.
Can I first of all say I thank the honourable member for raising his point. I always expect ministers to take seriously correspondence from members whichever side of the House. It is totally unacceptable. Not if I can't make a meeting happen, but I do expect people's correspondence to be dealt with quickly and effectively. What I would say is the Treasury bench, I hope, will be listening very carefully, and I hope that we'll make contact with the honourable member. It is, as I said, not acceptable. I'm getting more and more people complaining about ministerial correspondence. We even heard of one that took 12 months. It's not good enough. It's not acceptable. The ministerial teams need to get their act together and make sure members of Parliament, quite rightly, get a reply timely. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank you for what you just said in response to the point of order from the member for Hayes and Harlington. Is there any way that you could ensure that a minister comes to this House to give a statement about the hunger strikers in the prison? I visited one of them yesterday, and I am deeply concerned about what is going on in our prisons, where people are being held for an inordinate length of time on remand when they are being delayed their access to justice.
I cannot guarantee I'm not responsible for what goes on within this chamber. I'm here to keep good order. What I would say is, quite rightly, as another senior member raising a point of order, the Treasury bench will have hoped they would that. Who knows? It might be there are different ways, and you both know how to do it, in order to ensure that this is brought to the attention of the chamber. I will leave that with you, knowing with the experience between you, I'd hate to add up how many years, but I think between you, you know the answer to the question. Right. Point of order, Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've looked through the agenda up until Christmas, and it appears that there is no opportunity for members to question either the police settlement or the local government settlement. Normally, there is a debate held, or at least a statement given on the floor of the House about both of these, so that members are able to question those. I understand that it seems to be the government's intention to put a written ministerial statement about this on the last day of Parliament, not giving us an opportunity to challenge. Given that local authorities are finalising their budgets for next year at the moment, they need to know how much funding they're going to get from the government. So could you use your good offices to encourage the government to actually come forward with at least a statement?
Can I just say, quite rightly, the point has been raised. Once again, I expect the Treasury bench to have taken it over. What I would say, as I said previously, there are other mechanisms that you may wish to consider using. I could see the shock horror of the opposition chief whip when you said it. You know, I was absolutely overwhelmed by the shock that came out. But allowing that to rest, I do take seriously. This House should hear it. A WMS is not the answer on something so serious. So let me say, Treasury Bench should have heard it. We shouldn't shy away from this House. In fact, we should always come to the House first. I can't say it more than what I do. At some point, I would suggest once again that the ministerial code needs to be changed if people aren't going to take it seriously. Right, on that, we will now lead it. We've now got presentation of bill. Sarah Dyke.
Reindeer licensing for exhibition bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday the 16th of January 2026.
Friday the 16th of January 2026. Thank you. Right, we now come to the 10-minute rule motion. Katie Lamb.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to make provision about the collection and publication of data on immigration status, nationality and country of birth of certain persons relating to users of certain public services, claimants of certain benefits, the prison population and arrests, to require that such data is published at least once per calendar year, to require the Secretary of State to review the quality and consistency of any such data collected and published, and for connected purposes.
Hear, hear.
I firmly believe that for nearly 3 decades, migration to this country has been too high and remains so. Every election-winning manifesto since 1974 has promised to reduce migration. And yet, since 1997, with the unsurprising exception of 2020, net migration has run at more than 100,000 people per year. Like governments before it, the last government promised to reduce migration. As my right honourable friend, the member for North West Essex, has said, it failed to do so. To paraphrase my honourable friend, the member for West Suffolk, mass migration is the single biggest broken promise in British politics and the single biggest reason that trust in our politics is in such short supply.
Yeah.
But whatever we believe, it is an objective fact that our national conversation around immigration is often hampered by shockingly poor data, when that data even exists at all. My honourable friend, the member for Harborough, Oadby and Wigston, has worked for years to highlight this problem. As the Migration Observatory, a group of academics at the University of Oxford, noted just last week, migration data is plagued by gaps and quality issues which reflect structural and long-term problems with data silos, disorganised databases and failures to keep complete records. All in all, the Migration Observatory identified 10 areas of public policy which a lack of high-quality migration data is currently undermining. All of this starts with the fundamental question: how many people are in this country and who are they? And the truth is that we do not know. Remarkably, the United Kingdom does not have a proper system of entry and exit checks. We do not record the number of people actually arriving in the country or the number of people actually leaving. The migration figures that we see published every year are just best guesses.
Exactly.
When people do arrive here, we don't have comprehensive data on exactly where they've come from or where in the country they might be moving to. Our best guess for this comes once a decade at the census, but given the scale and pace of migration since the last census in 2021, this information will now almost certainly be hopelessly out of date. Recently, we saw the Office for National Statistics issue new figures on net migration for 2024. Using these new methods, the ONS now thinks that emigration of British nationals had been underestimated by 2/3 of a million people between 2021 and 2024. For years, policy in this country was made on the basis of the old guess, which showed British national immigration running at below average. These new figures invite serious questions about why so many British nationals, the vast majority of them young, are leaving this country. And yet, for years, the official data showed that there was no such problem, and so the conversation in this place never proceeded beyond the level of anecdote. When people do arrive here, we know far too little about them. We don't know the number of foreign criminals who've been awarded visas since 2021 or where they've come from. We don't have the full information on how many people move between the asylum system and the formal legal migration system. In the case of EU migrants, we don't know why these people are coming here or how many of them already have EU settled status. All of this concerns the flow of migrants coming to this country, not those already here. When it comes to assessing the contribution of migrants who are already here, our understanding is even worse. In 2020, data about income tax and national insurance contributions broken down by nationality was discontinued. We have no such data by visa type. We have little data on the earnings or employment rate of migrants by immigration status, visa type or nationality following the collapse of the Labour Force survey. We don't know the immigration status of benefits claimants for benefits other than universal credit, which makes up about half of our working age benefit spend. When it comes to universal credit, we don't have detailed nationality data on claimants. We don't know how much migrants are costing this country in legal aid or in translation services. We don't know what proportion of eligible foreign nationals are receiving pension benefits. We don't know the total cost in any given year to the NHS or to state education of migrants' pre- and post-indefinite leave to remain status. We don't have full official figures on the total number of foreign nationals in social housing or where those in social housing were born. So without data on what migrants are contributing to the public purse and what they might be costing, we cannot possibly have a full and informed conversation about the relative impact of migration on the taxpayer. In turn, we cannot make fully informed decisions about who should come here, from where, and under what conditions. Of course, fiscal contributions are not the only important measure. When it comes to data on migrant crime, the picture is just as patchy as my right honourable friend, the member for Newark, has repeatedly highlighted. While we do have, albeit outdated, figures on the prison population by nationality, we still do not have full official data on the number of people arrested by nationality, the immigration status of prisoners, or the number of people sentenced but not imprisoned by nationality. The indicative data that we do have about migrant crime has been obtained via Freedom of Information Act requests and is often incomplete or disputed. Because it is not released on a consistent basis, it is also very hard to assess over time. Yet, in the absence of any alternative, this is the basis on which we must conduct the debate. We have no information at all on the nationality or immigration status of those referred to prevent, a glaring gap in our ability to combat extremism. And all this, everything that I've said, relates only to the UK's legal population. We do not have, and have not had for some time, a credible estimated figure about the number of people who are in this country illegally. There has been no official attempt to combine data sets we could use, utility usage, health restrictions, census data, grocery purchases, to establish this number. So we cannot know what pressure this might be putting on public services or on infrastructure, and we cannot properly assess how much money needs to be invested into our border force and immigration enforcement. We don't have any information about internal deportation targets within immigration enforcement and border force and what proportion of those targets are being met. We don't know what happens to asylum seekers who've been refused asylum but have not been returned to their home countries. We don't know how often and in what context human rights-based claims are made to thwart removal and how often those claims are successful, particularly as we don't yet have access to the judgments of the first-tier immigration tribunal. How can we possibly have a well-informed conversation about illegal migration without a full understanding of the facts? Those of us who wish to end the era of mass migration are often the loudest voices in calling for more data. Yet those who believe that this period of mass migration has been a good thing for our country should be the biggest supporters of more comprehensive and accurate data on the impact of migration. We are often told, including in this House, that the British people have been misled or misinformed about the true impact of immigration on our country, that mass migration has in fact been better for this country than many believe. If that is the case, then let us see it in the data. If, as many members on the benches opposite and to my left may claim, the majority of migrants are in net fiscal positive, then let us see it in the data. If, in fact, migrants are no more likely to commit crime than British nationals, then let us see it in the data. Based on the indicative data that we do have, I believe this is exceedingly unlikely. But until we have access to the full facts, the conversation about migration in this place and across our country will necessarily fall short. There is no good reason to oppose a better informed national conversation around immigration. More data and evidence would allow us to make better decisions about who should be allowed to come to and stay in our country and in what numbers. It would allow us to truthfully assess the impact of different migrant groups, moving us on from generalisations about the whole of migration and towards a more productive conversation about the relative contributions of specific migrant groups by nationality and visa type. And most importantly of all, it would provide transparency for the British people and enable more detailed scrutiny of any government's policy on migration. In countries like Denmark, where migrant contribution data is published regularly, the government trusts its citizens to consider the data, consider their policies, and, in turn, to make up their own minds about whether or not they support the action being taken. After decades of broken promises, this is the very least the British people deserve: the right and ability to scrutinise in full the migration policy of their elected government. I sincerely hope that ministers in the Home Office and across government will recognise this and will work with the ONS to produce a more comprehensive and accurate data set in the years ahead. Immigration policy cannot be set in isolation. The people living in this country are this country, and so the flow of people coming here necessarily has an impact on every area of our lives. Governments do not exist independently of the nations that they govern, and nations do not exist independently of the people who constitute them. They are, wholly and entirely, a result of those people, their collective contributions and their collective failings. Immigration policy, therefore, is upstream of our public finances, the health of our public services, the cost of housing, the quality of our schools, the population of our prisons, the cohesion of our communities, and the strength of our democracy. The very least that we can do when discussing an issue of such enormous importance is to ensure that public policy is properly informed by the full facts.
That the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. The question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare to bring in the bill?
Neil O'Brien, Chris Philp, Claire Coutinho, Matt Vickers, Sarah Ball, Lewis Cocking, Jack Rankin, Harriet Cross, Peter Bedford, Andrew Snowden, Bradley Thomas and myself, Mr. Speaker.
Katie Lamb.
Data Publication and Quality, Immigration, Nationality and Country of Birth Bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday the 16th of January.
Friday the 16th of January. We now come to the Opposition Day motion on seasonal work. I inform the House that I have selected the amendment tabled in the name of the Prime Minister. I now call the Opposition spokesperson to move the motion. Nigel Huddleston.
Thank you, and I beg to move the motion as stated on the order paper in my name and others, Mr. Speaker. Last year's budget, with its increases in national insurance, increases in business rates and inflation-busting pay rises, led to more than 180,000 job losses because it increased the cost of labour. Most economists, and indeed most sensible people, understand that when you increase the price of something, there is less demand for it. By increasing the cost of jobs, Labour caused unemployment. And yet this year, fully aware of rising unemployment, the Chancellor remarkably came back for more. And with her colleagues in the Cabinet, she is imposing even more costs on business through the unemployment bill, with more regulations and a whole new set of taxes, like the tourism tax. These decisions will do even more damage, snatching the opportunity of a first job, a seasonal job, or an entire career from young people and indeed people of all ages. Yes, indeed.
Particularly on the tourism tax, there was a question I posed to the government only a couple of months ago when the Minister said, and I quote, that we think they've been taxed enough. Is it a surprise to this side of the House, then, that we see a tourism tax is being brought forward?
Yes, indeed, my honourable friend's making an important point, because I was here to hear that. Not only did he say there were no plans to bring in a tax, but clearly there were, because a few weeks later one was brought in, but he did say that the sector's been taxed enough. Well, I agree with that, Minister. I don't, therefore, agree with the Chancellor. Now, of course, not content with the damage to businesses and jobs done in last year's budget, the Chancellor this year decided to go even further in her latest budget and went for the pockets of working people directly by making them pay more tax, a clear manifesto breach. Working people are paying the price for this government's inability to tackle the ballooning welfare bill and their inability to control their unions and their backbenchers. The budget wasn't about the economy, it was all about internal party management. It is appalling that we have a Chancellor who appears to be willing to see thousands of our constituents losing their jobs, as long as she saves hers. In short, the budget was a £26 billion tax hike on working people in order to pay for Labour's welfare spending. Last year's budget destroyed jobs. This latest one disincentivised work. It takes a special kind of incompetence to destabilise both the demand and the supply of labour simultaneously. But this government has somehow managed to do just that. Indeed.
Right, Honourable Premier, isn't the truth here that we have a government that's got no business experience and thinks that you can simply push the costs down to business, squeeze and squeeze them, and they'll pass the prices on to customers? They'll have no customers, there'll be no businesses, there'll be no jobs.
Absolutely, my right honourable friend's making a really important point. It's quite remarkable following the budget to hear Labour MPs go to their constituents saying, oh, we've helped you out, we've reduced the costs. Talk to them, they'll find it was the very opposite of that.
I thank the Shadow Secretary of State for giving way. He, like me, would have been out in our constituency speaking to small businesses, and I'm sure Labour MPs would have been over the weekend too. A local publican told me that she was going to have to lay off staff in January because of the extra taxes that this Chancellor came back for, more taxes that she said she wouldn't do since the last budget. I just wonder whether the Shadow Secretary of State had those experiences in hospitality businesses that employ particularly young people.
Sir Secretary of State.
Yes, my honourable friend again is absolutely correct. The hospitality sector has been particularly hard hit by Labour's damaging economic policies. Many of us out on Small Business Saturday spoke to many of those businesses, and unfortunately, I think UK hospitality fear that there could be a further 100,000 job losses because of their policies.
Yes.
I'm most grateful to him. Could I draw his attention to Matt Allam, who runs the Cricketers and 2 other pubs in my constituency, who is devastated by this budget, having been clobbered last year with the NIC increases, but that our policy of relieving smaller businesses and high street businesses of business rates would make all the difference. And could you persuade the government to adopt that policy in this debate?
Well, exactly. I suspect during today's debate we'll hear many names of great pubs. I'll try and visit as many of them as I can, as long as they still survive, indeed. But he is absolutely right. There is an alternative course of action here. There is a conservative, pro-business economic policy that we can advocate. And I'll come on to some of the numbers later on in my speech and show the appalling impact, in particular, on pubs. So, certainly, yeah.
Honourable gentleman for giving way, and yes, I was out, like many, I'm sure, of my colleagues on these benches, talking to small high street businesses in my constituency in Saltaire specifically. And for many of them, the permanent reduction in business rate announced by the Chancellor is very welcome, and they are not hit by property revaluations and will be getting reductions in their business rates and welcome the levelling of the playing field with the online giants. How would he be proposing to pay for his party's unfunded proposals?
Yeah, I suggest the honourable lady talk to those constituents again, and I don't think you have to be a sparkling economist to work out that when something's gone up, it's higher. It's not lower. They're not getting a permanent reduction in business rates. The numbers are going up. That's basic economics and facts. And of course, I'll just make a little bit of progress and then I'll give way to the honourable gentleman. So in its part-time, seasonal and temporary workers, young workers and people in sectors such as food production, tourism, retail and hospitality are particularly being hit. But we perhaps should not be surprised for this, as many honourable members have already pointed out. Labour just don't understand economics, they don't understand business and they don't understand incentives. I'll give way to my honourable friend first of all.
Can I thank the Senator for bringing this forward? This is an incredibly important debate, and government, with respect to government, has a lot to answer in the points that are put forward. Can I put a point on the Northern Ireland agri-food sector in particular? The licensing process, how they bring people in, is so laborious. It's putting people off. It means that when we need the workers in the agri-food sector, we're not getting them. So the honourable gentleman is right to put forward the case for hospitality. Can I put forward the case for the Northern Ireland agri-food sector, who are also under great pressure, and this system from government will disadvantage them?
Absolutely. The honourable gentleman is making a really important point here, because, of course, we see the particular hard hit where the numbers are easily available in the hospitality sector, and there's a lot of reports gone out about the job losses there. But the whole sectors, multiple sectors, will be hit by these changes. The honourable gentleman has also pointed out it's not just the tax hit, it's the regulatory burden. And as I say, just reinstates this point, this government doesn't understand business. Yes.
Dr. Scott,
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I do thank you for giving way. In 2023, just under 4,600 licensed premises closed down right across the UK. Was the 2024 Labour budget to blame for that?
No, the pandemic was largely to blame for that, which is precisely why, in order to recover from the pandemic, this government's spent £400 billion to help save lives and livelihoods, including supporting the hospitality sector. So I'm afraid I don't accept the premise there. Now, few members of the Cabinet, of course, have ever worked in the private sector, and I don't think any of them have actually run their own business. Maybe one. The honourable gentleman, perhaps he can correct me.
Party opposite will know my background and work career, because I mentioned I used to be a teacher every single time. I would just ask the gentleman to consider the fact that many members of his party talk about education and they haven't been teachers. Would he not recognise that actually, as members of Parliament, we come here taking with us the experience of people that we speak to? He spoke about the fact that members opposite get out and speak to businesses. Would he not recognise that we come to this House with the experiences of those people we represent? So the argument that because we haven't ever worked in a business that we can't talk about business is a nonsense.
Chris, you may not have to work in business, but I do expect every member of Parliament to come to this House and advocate for business. Yes, good way.
It was a wonderful scene, as my honourable friend will remember, to see the King and the President of the United States sit down at the Windsor only recently. And what was particularly striking was on the British side, only the King had run a business. He ran the Duchy of Cornwall. Nobody else had run a business. On the American side, everybody had run a business. Isn't that quite a stark identification?
Absolutely. And I think the right honourable gentleman, again, is correct. You know, having people who run a business is good for government. I'm sorry to hear the honourable members opposite don't believe that their cabinet would be better if there were a few more pro-business people in them. I can assure him most of his constituents agree so. I'll give way. Yeah.
I do thank the honourable gentleman. I do have some affection for him. And he has a lovely smile. But on that same point, can you tell me how many members of the shadow cabinet, or indeed any one of the opposition MPs who serve on their front bench, have ever had to sustain a long-term position on a low-paid, insecure work, raising a family? Because those voices are equally important in this debate.
I have a great deal of affection for the honourable gentleman as well. We go back quite a long way from when we were elected. I will tell him, and it's one thing that actually I think on both sides of this House we do need to recognise. There are people on both sides of this House who come from quite poor backgrounds, from modest backgrounds, and actually trying to play that as if this benches are all full of posh people and the opposition benches are not is simply not true. And I think the honourable gentleman is doing disservice to the House to try and give an alternative impression. Yes.
Simon Hall. One state school boy to another state school boy, and the first of our families to go to university. Would you agree with me that we all have gaps in our knowledge, understanding and experience? But the way that you fill them is that you ask the people who practice in that sector, listen to what they have to say, don't just tell them they're wrong, that you're right because you're the government, and change when the facts urge a change upon you.
Again, the honourable gentleman put it incredibly well, and to say it's an onus of all of us in this place to make sure we do listen, we do learn, and we advocate on behalf of those who are making. I'll give way one more time, and then I'll make a little bit of progress. Yeah.
Antonia Banks.
Thank the honourable member for giving way, and I think with affection the times that we've sat together on the Politics Midlands sofa while we're being nice to the honourable member. I wonder if he would tell us, for the benefit of the House, how many 0 hours workers he's spoken to in the preparation of his speech today.
Come on, sir.
Yeah, I've spoken to a few 0 hour workers, and I can tell you many of them are not happy with the policy because you're going to make some of them unemployed. Right. So, as I said, Mr. Speaker, the one thing that we do know about Labour, of course, is that they do know how to spend other people's money. They just have no idea how it's created, how wealth is created, how the money that pays for our public services is generated in the first place. But they certainly know how to tax and spend. We've seen tax increases of £66 billion in just 2 budgets and tens of billions of pounds in additional debt. As Margaret Thatcher said, the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money. I'll give way to
very well. I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way. Members, honourable members on the opposition...
Sorry, Mr Hall, your voice is carrying, and I don't need to hear it.
It didn't carry all the way to me.
Probably is, but it carried to me. That's why I'm defending your
Exactly,
speech.
Mr. Speaker. Exactly, Mr. Speaker. The honourable gentleman and honourable and right honourable members on the opposition benches often talk about wealth creators. Now, of course, business people are wealth creators. Entrepreneurs are wealth creators. But would you agree with me that wealth is also created by the public services that we need, by the infrastructure that we need, and that has to be paid for?
Secretary of State.
I think the honourable gentleman's final words are quite, how are they paid for? The top 1% of income taxpayers in this country pay 29% of all income tax. There are estimates that Labour government policies have led to 16,000 of the wealthiest people in this country leaving. That's the equivalent of 1/3 to 500,000 of average taxpayers. The burden, therefore, is spread on the others. So instead of demonising some of the wealthiest people who pay incredibly and make an incredible contribution towards our public services, maybe they should thank them instead.
It's not just the wealthy people who have left as well. We know from the ONS data that 257,000 Brits have gone when it was supposed to be estimated at 70,000, of which about 2/3 to 3/4 were under the age of 35. So we are losing young people to the rest of the world because of the implications of not being able to get a job in this country.
The Secretary of State.
Yes, yet more common sense coming from this side of the chamber. I agree with the honourable gentleman. And of course, it's young people in particular who do not have confidence in this government and are fleeing. Mr. Speaker, it's quite clear I don't have a particularly high regard for Labour's economic competence, but even I didn't expect them to be running out of money quite so quickly. I expected them to be bad. I didn't expect them to be this bad. And it doesn't give me any joy or political joy to say that, because it's our constituents, my constituents, their constituents, who are paying the price for Labour's incompetence, with higher taxes and in many cases with their jobs and livelihoods. I genuinely wish they were better at government. But that is wishful thinking, because here's another hard truth about Labour. Despite the party's name, despite the false advocacy for working people, every Labour government since the Second World War has left office with unemployment higher than when they started. Every one, always leaving the Conservatives to clear up their mess. While we Conservatives know the best thing you can do for working people, the best thing you can do to lift people out of poverty is help them get a job, and the Conservatives have a far, far better record than Labour in doing that. Between 2010 and 2024, the Conservative-led governments oversaw the creation of 4 million jobs. That's an average of 800 a day, Mr. Speaker. This government is destroying them by the tune of hundreds of jobs per day.
I thank the Secretary of State for giving way. Well, we know what the government wants to do to support tourism and hospitality. It wants to get those on welfare to work in that sector, despite the fact some of those on welfare are there because the government has taxed tourism and welfare. Does he think that's socialism or incompetence?
I think the honourable gentleman knows what my answer to that is. The irony, it would be laughable if it wasn't so sad, of the policy that they announced over the weekend to put government subsidies into creating jobs when actually they could do a better job at running the economy and they would be created themselves. It's something I will come on to again in a moment. Mr. Speaker, in terms of the record of the last government, of course, we also took millions of people out of paying income tax. We increased the tax-free allowance from £6,475 that we inherited under Labour to £12,570. And as soon as we were in a position, following the pandemic, to start reducing taxes, that's exactly what we did. Reduce the national insurance on workers from 12% to 10%, and then again from 10% to 8%, with a plan to eliminate employee national insurance altogether and, of course, align the thresholds. Labour talked about backing business when in opposition, but they're doing no such thing in government. In the budget, the Chancellor had the brass neck to say she was helping the hospitality industry with business rates. In reality, hotels, pubs, theme parks, restaurants, cafes, all seeing an increase in their business rates, as are the wider retail and leisure sectors. Investment in hospitality and tourism is already being paused or diverted overseas due to the UK's rising costs and regulatory environment. I'll give way.
I thank my honourable friend, Shadow Secretary of State, for giving way.